Yeah. Hello, everyone. Does my mic work? First off, ladies and gentlemen, attendees, live streamers, welcome. This was my first time actually in a public speaking event, so please be kind. I'm imagining all of you are naked, so it's a little awkward. So thank you for coming to my track. Today I wanted to really talk about something that's incredibly important to me, and I hope that as you walk away from this presentation that it will be equally important to you. So let's begin. So first off, we're just going to do some introductions that the marketing overlords will require me to do. And then we'll get straight into talking about the rapid cloud growth that we are seeing across all industries. And we're going to go through some case studies. I'm going to show you some of the common pitfalls that we've been seeing when we perform cloud security assessments, and hopefully some key takeaways as well. So first off, actually, I wanted to kind of get a raise of hands. Who is in the cloud today? Please raise your hand. I see some gears sort of turning in some people's eyes. Keep your hands raised, please. So a lot of you guys. Let me sprinkle in some more. Who's in Azure? Keep your hand up. AWS, GCP, Oracle, IBM, ServiceNow, Citrix Cloud, Okta, Duo. Everyone is in the cloud, right? This accelerated during the pandemic. When my kids were in, I was living in Los Angeles during the pandemic. I was in a little tiny apartment, and the pandemic hit. I had two eight-year-old kids who were stuck at home doing Zoom classes. And one of the first things I noticed was every time I had to log them into their systems, everything was cloud-based, everything. And I'm not going to talk about some of the cloud security issues that I saw in that school system at the time that I privately had to disclose to their security team, but my kids' data was breached about a year later. So this is something that's important to me because it is something that all organizations, I saw a lot of hands up, so for the live streamers, about 3/4 of the audience had their hands up, right? So a little about me. So again, my name is Anton Abaya. I am wildly passionate in everything cybersecurity, GRC, and the PCI DSS. I've been a PCI QSA for about almost 16 years. And before I managed the team, the GRC team within Converge, I also managed our virtual CISO services, and I also oversee cloud security within my organization. Before that, I was a principal consultant doing PCI QSA engagements. I still am. I was also a red teamer, a penetration tester. I love the technical side, and I never wanted to let go of that. I'm also a social engineer. In fact, if some of you look at your mobile phones right now, you might see that there is another wireless network that looks like the PCI Council's network that's labeled 5G at the end. It gets me in the door every time, and that's another story for another day. I also developed the cloud security assessment methodology within our company because I got to a point as a pen tester when I realized enough is enough. There's so many breaches happening because of how we're moving to cloud at light speed, right? And what I found is customers that have performed these cloud security assessments with us are doing this annually now because the cloud is changing, it's shifting, and sometimes it's not only the tenant's fault and the developers within your own organization, but sometimes it's the cloud itself that's changing. I'm from Boston, and there's a saying, if you don't like the weather, wait five minutes. The same thing is happening in the cloud, no matter which one you're in, and we are seeing it today. All right, marketing overlords will tell me to speak to this slide. I am from Converge. Some of you in the audience are my clients. or former clients, and thank you for the privilege of working for you. I used to be I'm still part of the subsidiary of Converge called AccuData Systems, who's been the PCI QSA for about 16 years as well. When we were acquired, we were a 39-year-old company, and it's now given us, it's actually been great, right? Our cybersecurity is huge. We have 30 plus pen testers and a full suite of services within our cyber umbrella. All right, cloud growth and security concerns. Just as a raise of hands, a lot of people had their hands up on cloud, on being in the cloud, but who is concerned about cloud security today? The same number of hands. And that really supports some of the statistics that I'm showing here today. So the cloud security market is expected to reach $106 billion with an 18.1% compound annual growth rate. Now, what's actually interesting really here is that 91% are concerned about cloud security. 18% had experienced a cloud-related security breach in the last 12 months. 41% have a cloud security architect. What that actually means is most don't, right? And this is important, right? There is a demand for cloud security professionals, and we are moving stuff to the cloud faster than we can control it, faster than we can mitigate the risk. I'm not going to talk about all the data breaches. I think I'm preaching to the choir, right? But cloud breaches are happening. Breaches are happening in general, but cloud breaches are happening because we don't understand cloud very well. And the folks that move stuff into the cloud, they want to move fast and quickly. And all the lessons that we've learned on how to protect traditional on-premise data centers, we're repeating the same mistakes in the cloud. In this donut, you'll see in red that represents a lot of the initial attack vectors for a data breach, right? But if you look at the green and the orange, a lot of that is actually cloud-based authentication. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, right? Or cloud misconfigurations. Everything is connected, right? So on-premise Active Directory or on-premise data centers have connectivity into Azure AD. Raise of hands, are you, Mike? Let's just, again, who's using Microsoft 365 today? Teams? SharePoint? Okay. After this, go into your SharePoint, search for the word password. You'll see Excel files, you'll see text files, and Microsoft doesn't make it easy to see all of these inadvertently exposed SharePoint sites. Behind the scenes, some of those are actually Teams underneath, right? Or it could be OneDrive, right? It's everywhere, and I've seen it at every company. Microsoft doesn't make it easy to find these, and you have to write a special script to enumerate who has everyone access. Let me keep going. Today, everything is a service. Even my own practice. We have vCISO as a service. Our red team has penetration testing as a service. And how is it that most organizations are going to cloud? Well, one thing that I've found is shadow IT developers or shadow IT. I had a client, over 1 billion credit card transactions per year. They were less concerned about PCI at that point because they had a very large cloud footprint that security did not know about, IT did not know about, because marketing built it. And they brought more than 20 million records of PII in the cloud. And of course, the CFO loved it. The board of directors loved it because it was bringing in additional revenue, bringing in customers into the stores. They gamified it, actually. Now, other ways companies are getting to the cloud are through acquisitions, right? They might acquire a company that has a cloud presence, but their traditional IT staff is familiar only with on-prem. And then there's the cloud migrations. I see this in a lot of corporations now or organizations where they have a cloud-first strategy, right? The CIO or the CTO is saying, hey, I know we have an on-prem data center. From here on out, though, if you need a new server for anything, cloud first. Maybe AWS or Azure, either. And then if you can't do it there, then on-prem. But almost always they're gonna choose the cloud. It's cheaper, it's faster. And sometimes they can skip some of those tickets that you need to create because they can just go straight to the cloud and create it themselves. And everyone's doing it. So it's a little bit of the jump on the bandwagon sort of thing. 10 years ago, everyone was a little skittish about moving into the cloud and putting regulated data there. But now no one really is because everyone else is doing it. And since everyone else is doing it, let's all get breached together? Not acceptable, right? There's still the shared responsibility matrix. And the cloud service providers are really good at telling you about that, but they're not very good at telling you how to do that. Here's an example of a real-world cloud attack landscape I developed for a client because they really didn't know how to protect it. In purple was corporate Infosec visibility. This is a team of 20, right? Protecting their PCI systems, a lot of retail source, that sort of thing. But they had almost zero visibility into what was happening in Azure and AWS. And if you look at those arrows between AWS and the purple and the black boxes, you see on-premises Active Directory and Azure Active Directory, right? We're using Azure as a way to get into business apps used by employees within. We're using it sometimes to let guests in so that we can share SharePoint files, that sort of thing. But what you're not seeing is what pen testers are seeing, where as soon as you enable that, you've expanded your attack landscape from an IAM perspective. The cloud loves the term identity as a perimeter, right? And I'll give you some more examples of how identity as a perimeter is broken when you're not looking at it close enough. Here's a quick tree map diagram that I also developed for the client, just to give them a visual, I'm a very visual person, of the risk in their environment. Where you see those treasure boxes, that's where I found PII, EPHI, cardholder data potentially, right? All regulated data. They didn't know, and they needed to show this to their board of directors, right? The CISO had to show this to the board of directors because he needed to stop the bleeding that marketing was starting to do on their own. First example, I was doing cloud security assessment. This organization had migrated from on-premise completely into the cloud. The entire infrastructure, all VMs, infrastructure as a service. Well, not really. Usually they will hire a third-party IT integrator, right, to migrate them there. And so they were smart and said, let's do a cloud security assessment, just make sure we did things right. This is an example of where I think the IT integrator really wanted to make it easy from a BCP-DR perspective to snapshot their virtual hard drives, their VMs, and back it up to maybe another region. Right? But what they didn't see is that the blob, if you remember the S3 buckets in AWS, those had its own problems a few years ago. They've gotten a little better, but even Azure has that same problem when it's misconfigured. In this case, the client, the tenant, and this storage account, the storage blob, was open to any other tenant in Azure, and anybody can spin up a tenant, including an attacker. And when I saw it during the cloud security assessment, I immediately told the customer, hey, I was able to access this from my own corporate account, not the one you gave me. And these are snapshots of all of your VMs. I downloaded a few and I saw some very sensitive things. They immediately treated it as an incident. And when someone in the email said, yeah, we don't think it was compromised, I immediately replied, I can't even see myself accessing it because you haven't turned on cloud control plane logging requirement 10 of PCI. And of course, if you go to Microsoft and ask them, hey, can you look and see who has accessed this storage blob? They're going to say, sorry, we don't capture those logs. That's on you, shared responsibility matrix. Identity as a perimeter. This client had about 17,000 accounts, of which 13,000 were member accounts, so employee accounts, some guest accounts as well. This was a pen test and a cloud security assessment with a sprinkling of PCI services as well. One thing that I noticed was that out of all of their accounts, about 1,000 were stale and unused. Passwords hadn't been changed in over 90 days. When I extended that to 180, to even to 360, the number barely really reduced, which meant that when they enabled Azure AD Connect, which is what integrates on-premise Active Directory with Azure Active Directory, every printer, voice over IP phone, conference room, anything with an AD account, service account, was migrated to the cloud in Azure Active Directory when those accounts never needed to have an account there. It expands the attack landscape. And what actually happened there is, as part of the penetration test, I did a credential spray, and some of those service accounts had very weak password of company123. While MFA was being enforced, nobody had ever logged on. So I just registered my own token for the first time. So it was an account takeover. And then from there, I could start navigating SharePoint, right? So again, go back to your SharePoint right now. Search for password, search for routing number, search for Visa or credit card in double quotes. You'll be surprised what you see. And I see it in every cloud security assessment. I only have 2.5 minutes. I'm going to speed things up a little bit here. Here's a shadow cardholder data environment that we discovered. The client insisted we don't have any PCI data. But Microsoft actually has something called Microsoft Purview. If you kind of zoom in there, you'll see compliance.microsoft.com. Again, I'm going in as a global admin. And I showed them this because Microsoft actually does this for you already, even if you're not licensed. But if you want to click and see and investigate, they want you to pony up for some more, right? They were surprised by this. And as global admin, I was able to, even though they weren't licensed, I was also able to prove that by searching SharePoint for passwords or even credit cards, lots and lots of Excel spreadsheets, right, with cardholder data in it. But that's not the only thing. Search SharePoint for access key, AWS access key, secret keys, right, API keys. It's all over the place. Here's an example of a SQL as a service, database as a service on Azure. The client actually did a really good job to limit connectivity to specific IPs. I think these are the home IPs and maybe corporate of whoever the developer was. But F for execution, A for effort, F for execution. That little red box there, that actually allows that SQL database to be accessible to any other tenant. It looks like it's just to allow Azure to talk to it, but that actually allows any tenant to talk to it. This has been covered in Black Hat many times, but attackers are finding ways to hide service principals, other identities, and give them the global administrator role. This one was called generically service account, and I immediately brought it up to the client when I saw it. Right? These are global admins in their organization. And I saw something generically called service account. So I asked the client, hey, do you know what this is? They said no. Well, I have a create date time of 8 months ago. Can you look at your tickets or logs and who, well, we don't have logs, sorry. We don't have it on. And that's very common. They treated it as an incident, but they didn't have logs to know what was going on. Supply chain attack vector. We all know about SolarWinds. Attackers now are going after MSPs, right? When you move to the cloud, usually you work with an IT integrator. And usually they give themselves global admin rights to be able to move your stuff. And usually they keep those rights. And what's broken about this is that Microsoft only recently started showing this on the Azure Active Directory blade for admins to see. And what's actually happening is that the company that I've kind of obscured the name of, their tenant has global admin rights. On the other side of the fence, you will have anybody who has a help desk role having full global admin rights. So attackers are actually going after the MSPs because they know the MSPs have one-to-many relationships into other tenants. And when they compromise those MSPs, they compromise your tenant. I told you to look for API keys, but they're also on GitHub. Developers it's their playground. They love the cloud because it's easy. They don't have to create tickets to spin up a server and go through red tape, right? But part of that too is sometimes some of those developers will, unfortunately, have enterprise code in their own personal GitHub accounts. Shadow, cardholder data environment discovered. So in this client, I asked him, do you have a call center? Yes. This is post-pandemic, are they still working in the office? No. We migrated everything to Amazon Connect telephony services, right? Okay, are you storing call, do you have a pause feature for the call recordings for PAN, right? They said no. Oh, okay, I'm gonna write that up. Are you doing any kind of transcription, speech to text, anything like that? Developer said, no, definitely no, we're not doing it. Are you sending that live to maybe an AI to do some customer sentiment analysis, anything like that? No. So great. Well, we're assessors, right? I'm PCI QSA, trust but verify. And sorry, if we can go back to the slide. In that slide, right, you'll see that actually they were transcribing it. I went to the billing pages and I saw, hey, what's this AWS transcribe? There's some money going in there. Let me dig into this a little more. And so I saw that they were actually transcribing the calls after all. There was an S3 bucket where they were storing it. The CVV was in there. The PAN was in there. It was not protected as expected. The CISO didn't know about it, and a rogue developer did it anyhow. Right? And if you actually look in there, you'll see sentiment, you'll see that the consumers gave their PAN and the agent even read it twice. Really good software for transcribing, but also very, very risky from a shadow cardholder data environment perspective. And I'm happy that PCI v4 has created a new requirement for organizations to do their own scoping exercises. All right, I know I'm out of time, so let me just quickly give you an arsenal of things that you can do today to secure your environment. Perform a cloud security assessment. Like I said, our customers that have done this, they do it annually now because the cloud is shifting. There's a lot of unmitigated control within their own tenancy, within their own developer environment. They have DevOps, but they don't have DevSecOps. And they're moving very fast. They have no control over it. Perform a data discovery, privacy and protection assessment. Privacy laws are being written right now that require a data risk assessment or data protection assessment. Most of the time when I perform these and I ask the question, where's regulated data? They don't know. So they leave it up to me to find it. Sorry, one more, back a slide. Enable cloud-native security compliance and governance tools and or use third-party security solutions, especially in a multi-cloud environment. Time and time again, I will take a look at a cloud environment and they don't even have cloud trails or Azure Event Hub or Sentinel or any kind of logging or retention enabled. The default in Azure is 30 days. Secure all authentication directories in MFA. I talked about the account takeover risk, right? I guarantee you that if you look at Azure Active Directory, you will have a large majority of the accounts that don't have a registered token. I see it all the time. I mentioned already number 5, enable cloud control plane monitoring and logging. Number 6, create guardrails and blueprints. Think of it as a golden image to prevent developers, rogue developers from spinning things up that are a little too leaky. And of course, the last one, control, limit developer access to the cloud. They love it, and that is how you will get breached. I hope that my presentation leaves you with a healthy sense of paranoia. I wanted to thank the PCI Council for inviting me to present on such a high platform, and let's secure cloud together. Thank you.